With the election over, Democrats and Republicans will soon be back at the negotiating table, driven there by the so-called fiscal cliff, the moment in January 2013 when the Bush-era tax cuts expire and automatic cuts to defense and social programs take effect. In order to avoid the scenario, President Obama is proposing a grand bargain that would reduce the $16 trillion deficit by $4 trillion over 10 years, relying on a 3-to-1 mix of spending cuts and revenue increases. Republicans, meanwhile, have rejected the idea of including new taxes, but say they're open to negotiations. It remains to be seen what exactly will be on the table when the two sides sit down.
I would say that Washington is capable of just about anything, but I'm not sure compromise is one of them at this point. Things seem to be a bit more polarized than they have been in the past.
Well, I think Washington is the political world, the political capital. And politics is the art of the possible, the art of compromise. Unless politicians want to put themselves out of business, I think they'll compromise and they'll find a way to make it work. Or somebody will end up suffering because there will be cuts here or there, and everybody wants to keep what they're getting. So that's the tough situation. Where do you cut?
And how do you avoid cutting that will absolutely decimate those already devastated?
Well, Taryn, you bring up an interesting point there. I'm not sure that they're really concerned with making sure that the cuts are fair. I think at this point they realize they just need to make cuts and make a deal. And unfortunately, that means a number of people are probably going to get thrown under the bus here.
I want to bring up this comment from Van Eyck, and I think this is the way a lot of people feel when we talk about the federal budget. Billions, trillions, frillions, bazillions, mazillions, gazillions. I've given up. The federal budget debt is just a bunch of numbers. And to your point, Taryn, it's not just a bunch of numbers. We talk about it like a bunch of numbers, but when you talk about programs like Social Security, like Medicare, like Medicaid, that's people's livelihood.
Right. It's not a bunch of numbers. It's a bunch of people, and it's a bunch of our citizens. And, we're talking about some of the neediest and most vulnerable in our society, and we're going to have to choose. We make a joke about George Bush and conservative capitalism, but there is room for compassionate conservatism. There is room for, compassion at every level on each side. And we're going to have to just choose, number one, what kind of society we actually want to be within our framework, and number two, how to best reach those goals fiscally without killing anyone. I always say that the day will be better tomorrow. At least no one passed today, so we can make it right tomorrow.